and welcome. I'm Somesh. This is Dashain time, a time to rejoice, a time to meet family, and more importantly, a time to spend on shopping spree. Dashain has always played an important role in the national economy. The Dashain bonus brings extra money to people, which just gives an impetus to spending capacity of the consumers. Apart from a lot of cash, a lot of animals enter the market for consumption, increasing meat consumption by multiple folds during Dashain. To discuss more on the festival and Dashain economy, we have Sujeev Shakya in our studio. Shakya is a business executive and chairs the Nepal Economic Forum, a not-for-profit private sector-led economic policy center. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you so much.
So how does this time Dashain look around?
This time at least it's much more peaceful. At least people are being able to travel. No closures, no bans, so people are being able to move within the country, so that's good. But then in terms of the consumption part, if you listen to people in the wholesale markets, the garments markets of Kathmandu, or if you take the markets of Dharan or Pokhara, the major consumption areas, it has not been so, as high as it used to be earlier. Maybe there are too many shops that are coming up. Maybe buying habits are changing. Maybe trends are changing.
But this is something the shopkeepers or the wholesalers keep saying every year. This time the business is not as previous years.
That's true. It's like the import has, while unfortunately in Nepal not much of statistics is available, but then in terms of imports have, come down. And also it goes with the trends. Nowadays people don't wait for Dashain to buy a new set of clothes. I think even a lot of families at the bottom of the pyramid, there are lots of other occasions. What is happening is also that earlier Dashain was a national festival. Now if I'm I would rather wait for my Losar or my Tamu festival or my Chhat to buy my new set of clothes rather than to do it in Dashain like you're doing earlier. So as the trends are changing post 2006, where communities are realizing their own ethnic identities, I think a lot of other festivals are also coming. So that is also taking away a bit of steam from Dashain. That's one of the...
There seems to be a lot of push from the advertisers. If you look at the newspapers or TVs, there's Dashain offer everywhere, and most major companies are spending millions of rupees this time around.
Yes, I think this is a buying spree, but especially because as per law, everybody gets an extra month of salary at this point of time. So there is additional money for people to spend. But at the same time, people are being cautious to say that, especially among, other families I've been talking to, they're saying that, I would rather buy my new set of clothes for my children for Losar than for Dashain. So that way there has been change. And of course, consumption is more on, if you look at white goods, or if you look at especially on, food and, beverages and alcohol, that's where I think the more the consumption, the advertising is.
Yeah, that's true. But maybe the budget was not declared on time, and there was quite a lot of confusion about whether some civil servants would get extra money or the bonus on time. So that could have been...
Yes, that has also impacted, and surely it has, the budget has its own role, because the budget is not passed, so you don't have development activities that are going on. So the first tranche of money for this fiscal year has not been paid out. So there's not much of money in the villages at this point of time. And also because of the liquidity crisis and what's happening with the economy, people are being cautious, storing a bit of money. So the consumption, there isn't been an impact for sure. The budget has a role to play.
And then you talked about changing trends. One is definitely there are other festivals which now look more important than Dashain for some ethnic groups, of course. And would you also say that it's also because some religious facets added, which was attached to Dashain, has been changing? Now it's no more a religious festival. Maybe it's just a cultural one.
That's also true, but also what is changing is the societal, configuration. Now, more and more families are nuclear. If you look at even in Kathmandu, and if you have working women, and how many people can actually afford to slog during Dashain? Because what is Dashain seen as purely, women cooking and men having fun? That has been the traditional way of celebrating Dashain. So that is undergoing change. The other major change that we see, and I think a lot of people are impacted on that, is that earlier you could keep your domestic help. You know, a lot of people used to have helping hands at home that used to, you know, help during Dasai. Now, you know, they are going back to their own villages. They are, you know, wanting their own,
Thanks
in
to
their
peace.
own,
Thanks to peace.
also thanks to peace, and also in their own right, they also have the right to celebrate their festival. So what's happening is that, especially in nuclear families, without, you know, sort of help at home, it's impossible to manage a festival like Dasai. So if you see, increasing trends of people are going out, you know, traveling outside the country during Dasai.
People would rather go to Bangkok than
or, you know,
stay
go
home.
to Delhi or go somewhere. And also, as more and more women join the workforce, we would see this interesting, you know, sort of change in which festivals would be, you know, sort of celebrated. Because, you know, I mean, if you've got a, you know, a lady working in a bank, she's slogging the whole year, and this is the only time she gets a break with her family. So what do? I mean, again, slog back home and, you know, sort of
apart from journalists who have to work even during Dasai, most people get holidays. And would you say that more people, as in more women coming into workforce earning, has increased their buying capacity?
Yes, definitely it has increased buying capacity. If you see the way consumption is now increased in a, you know, festival like Tees, you know, that is showing how certain trends are changing. You know, 10 years ago, how much was spending during Tees, but now suddenly a lot of women, and suddenly if you've spent so much on Tees, you don't have much money to spend a month later for Dasai. So that is also some of the trends that are changing. You know.
But somewhere maybe we also need to worry, because people have started traveling outside. So the money is going out rather than coming in.
I think, you know, sort of any society, I mean, if you look at advanced societies, I mean, exposure, traveling is one of the, you know, great expenditure items. And the more people get exposed, it has a lot of benefits. People come back with new thoughts, new ideas. You know, I mean, people, restaurateurs going out, see new restaurants coming up, new ideas coming up, they bring up. So in the initially, when you look at in dollar and cents, you think that there's money going out. It has a long-term impact in terms of you are developing a society that is more and more exposed to the outer world, who understand the nuances of, you know, what is the trends that are happening in the outer world. So I think we need to see it positively. And you are seeing more destinations. Suddenly you go and, you know, see, you know, a city, and then you say that, okay, wow, why can't Kathmandu happen like this? Why can't, you know, my shop front look like this? Or why can't I design my cyber cafe, you know, as per this? So new thoughts do come in. So I think traveling as exposure, I think we should take it more in the positive than
in a longer term. Maybe
yes,
it helps, as you say.
Yeah.
And let's also talk about the animal sacrifice. A lot of animals are brought into the capital and even other parts of the world. I mean, we are asking you this question because after knowing that you're a vegetarian, how do you feel about that?
No, I think being vegetarian and animal sacrifice, I don't think there's any much of correlation on that part of it. But then I think I have been propagating this sacrifice-free Dasai for a couple of years. I think it is about, you know, sort of, I'm not against, you know, sort of eating meat. I think I cook, so you know, for my friends. So I don't think that's an issue. But then sacrifice in the name of religion, in the name of gods, I think that is something we need to introspect culturally. Because that's sort of a sign of a violent society. You know, and I think, you know, everywhere you know that, you know, by just, you know, sort of sacrificing innocent animals, you're not going to get anywhere. I think it's a good excuse.
On a lighter note, I mean, traditionally, the way we've been celebrating Dasai, if you don't eat meat, if you don't drink, if you don't play cards or other forms of gambling, there's no Dasai for you.
No, I'm not against eating meat, but I'm saying is that this whole open, you know, I mean, sacrificing animals, you know, you're making that as an excuse to eat meat. I mean, you buy meat and eat, I'm fine, you know, I mean, that's no issue. But then sacrificing it, you know, I mean, that doesn't give, you know, it's not a sign of a healthy society. And we are also Hindus, as a lot of other Hindus in this world. And if you go to south of India, they do their own little sacrifices using coconuts, using fruits. So I think we can shift to the, you know, sort of the religious part that way. And I'm not saying that we need to curtail on our consumption of meat. I mean, that's you know, human choices. But then, you know, if you look at Nepal, I always talk about the 3M identity of Nepal. You've got the Maoist, the mountains, and the massacre. You know, I mean, animal massacre. You know, I mean, that's and you know, I mean, rural massacre. So these are what you're seen as, and especially after 10 years of insurgency or so much of violence or people dying, I think we need to also inculcate a society where violence is, you know, in all forms, is, you know, questioned and condemned.
Is it not interesting that on one hand we shun the violence, we say violence is not good, but religiously our upbringing promotes us to do that violence?
Yes, and I think, I mean, we can take a separate perspective. If you so want blood, then, rather donate blood during Dasai, I mean, I mean, that's another way of looking at it, if blood is so much of a connection with the, festival, then why don't you, sort of donate 2 points of blood, for
But it's more about consuming blood than
yeah,
giving
so it is about, to change the whole perspective. It's so important, I think, is to see that, I mean, sort of, you look at these vehicle pujas that go on, in various organizations. It's another way of everybody to make additional money and to have a big party. I mean, is it required? You have your traditional, sort of the Shakti Peeths that, where a lot of sacrifice takes place. But there are also a lot of other things that, other sacrifices that are just taking place in just the name of another partying, another excuse for partying. And that's something that we need to really question, is to say that, is that the right way to do it? Is there alternatives? And there are alternatives. We are not only the, people, exactly, the Hindus in Nepal, I mean, there are the Hindus around the world. So it is to relook at this and to say that how can we, also culturally remain intact, do the things what we are supposed to do without getting into this violence and without openly, sort of accepting, violence as a part of everyday life.
You're a writer as well. So, I mean, writers are supposed to be sensitive. And do you think these kind of sacrifices are not going to make us a healthy society? In longer term, we'd continue this form of massacre, maybe a human massacre eventually, because that's been happening, and somehow we've been very worried about the criminalization. I mean, we see a lot of impunity, and this doesn't help us in longer term.
Yes, definitely. The having violence in society itself doesn't go, sort of a long way. Whether it's violence against animals, it's, well, I'm not trying to be a very, sort of an animal activist sort of a thing. No, but it's about what you're doing. I mean, when you're looking at it, say, if I can, sort of slaughter a goat today, then tomorrow, if it is a human, then why not? I mean, so and let's not forget, human sacrifices were also, conducted in this value very recently, in the recent past. You knew about it. So that way, it's to get into the transformation to say that, no, this is not okay. I mean, again, I would like to reiterate to say that to accept the fact that violence of this nature is not acceptable in a society that is progressing. I think this takes you back. It breeds more violence. And then who knows, and it becomes an acceptable way of life. And if you see the society here where, I mean, if you're driving around the streets where the people, the way they are getting at you, the way people are reacting, it is a lot to do, sort of with this whole culture of
maybe
violence.
We've accepted it as part of life, the violence, because 10 years ago, the way we reacted to anybody's murder, and now our reaction to a couple of murders is not the same. We're not as alarmed as we used to be.
Yes, I mean, we were discussing this at one of the, I think it was Samrat's book launch, where, one person dying in Rani Pokhri, committing suicide was such a big event. And then suddenly what happened is that now, sort of dying and people being killed, people being kidnapped, it's become so much part of our, sort of everyday life that we even don't, sort of bother to look at it. It just becomes a part of a headline news in the paper, and, and it just vanishes the next day. So if we are to create a society, a rounded society that looks at development, so from all aspects, then one of the things, and especially if we are going to talk about leveraging Lumbini, leveraging, the land of Buddha, and for our tourism, and it's a brand issue also.
And interestingly, our national flag carrier,
yeah,
had to sacrifice a goat because they thought there was some problem with the organization.
Yeah, so I think that these beliefs are going to. It's not. I'm not saying that this is going to change overnight, but then there has to be an intent to change. There has to be an intent to transform. Because even for a brand, I mean, if you look at tourism as a, tourism branding for Nepal, and if you're going to say that, we are like for, Mecca, like Jerusalem, we are going to sell Lumbini, the birthplace of Buddha, and then suddenly you say that in animal sacrifice is okay, and it's patronized by the state, it's patronized by everybody. I mean, that's not going to, I mean, the people who, and generally Buddhists who come into, sort of looking at.
Tell me honestly, how many takers have you actually found for your idea?
Oh, no, no, quite a bit. I think there was a couple of years back, I think there was a little procession that happened. A lot of people are even
These days
writing
it
about
happens.
it, and now people are coming out in the open. Maybe 10 years ago, if you had said something like this, I mean, it would have been taken a crime against the state, being a Hindu kingdom. But now I think it's become acceptable, and more people, and I know a lot of families. I mean, it's not that I have influence. A lot of families, I mean, my immediate families, I see a lot of my friends who have said that, okay, I mean, we'll buy the meat and get it, but let's do away with this annual sacrifice of a goat, or, I mean, let's